Hello friends, in today's video I will show you how not to play the opening in chess and how to punish opponent for typical amateur mistakes. We will observe a cruel game between an experienced student of mine who was playing white color and a 1500 rated chess.com player with the black pieces in a rapid 15-minute time control game. My student opened with e4, test by test, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and white opens up with the so-called Scotch game with d4. In this position, white is threatening to advance the pawn, chase away the black's knight off the center, so taking d4 is most popular response by black. White recaptures with the knight, and in this position, black has two most popular moves, knight to f6 and bishop to c5. Our opponent here makes a mistake, they take the knight on d4. Now, why is this a mistake? Because it allows white to build up the lead in development and it activates the most powerful piece white has to the very center where she cannot be hit by any of the black's pieces. Most of the time, we do not like to develop queen out early in the game simply because she's so valuable that if she gets hit, we will end up moving her around and not developing other pieces. For example, if this knight was on the square b8, black could just play knight to c6, develop a piece while hitting the queen. However, in this concrete position, queen is super safe, and the only way to hit her would be with the pawn move to c5, which doesn't hurt white's development in any way because c5 is not a developing move, and it also creates additional weaknesses along the d file. If you're interested in the weaknesses part, weak pawns, weak squares, you can definitely find a video of mine where I cover that concept. Now, in this position, black would really want to finish the development and castle kingside. However, knight to f6 would simply run into pawn to e5, which is a bit problematic because this knight has no good square to go to. So our opponent plays d6, which is a logical decision. It ensures that now knight could go to f6, and in case e5 happens, they always have an option to take it. In this position, my student decided to castle queenside so that he could safely launch the pawn storm attack on the king side. If we're already pushing all in on the king side, perhaps let's not have the king there as it's gonna get opened, and it's much more safe to have it on the queen side. So white plays knight to c3. Here opponent played knight to f6. Now my student developed a piece to f4 square. I know that perhaps it's not the most natural square for most people, but if we go bishop to g5, after bishop e7, black is able to unpin, and it's not very clear if the bishop on g5 is doing anything particularly. Now, I'm not saying that, of course, the bishop is bad, but with the bishop onto f4 square, we're pressing this d6 point, which makes black have second thoughts to pushing c6 or c5, plus, it might support the pawn break pawn to e5, which would open up the center if that's what we will want. Our opponent here plays bishop to e7, white castles queenside, and we would expect in a normal game black to simply castle kingside. Here, white has a typical plan of playing, for example, pawn to f3, putting the king to safety with king to b1. That's a prophylactic move that we always involve when we castle queenside. The king is just much safer in general on b1 than it is on c1. You could also notice if this diagonal, for example, ever gets opened, king can get checked, plus the king would also look at this a2 pawn, which the knight wouldn't have to protect anymore in the future. And white has this very typical pawn push on the g and h files. Would have a typical game with accelerated attack for the white pieces, and white would have had still great chances to play for a victory. However, opponent here played the move bishop to e6, a weird decision for a strong player because it delays castling. So it immediately raises questions of how can we punish bishop to e6 and delaying castling for black. I would like you to pause the video and try to put yourself into the shoes of the white's player. It is white to play. what would you play? And so white has a very strong response here to open up the center and try to attempt delay black's castling and develop an attack. And the move is e5. Now we're opening up the middle. Black is accepting the pawn. We of course want to keep the queens on the board because we're playing against the unsafe king. Opponent played bishop to d6, and here comes the shocking move, bishop to b5. Again, not allowing black to castle, and they're not allowed to play pawn to c6, as we have then in between move rook takes d6, hitting the queen, winning a piece, and then simply running away somewhere with the bishop, where white is winning. In the game, black decided to play knight to d7. Here you can pause the video and try to find another very good and strong move for white. So what was played in the game is not the absolute best move, but it's crushingly winning as well. Rook takes d6. The engine's top suggestion, as we looked at the game analysis, was queen takes g7, but it feels weird and unnecessary to take risks where we drop a piece with a check. So rook takes d6 is way more practical decision, as after takes and queen takes g7, black's king is stuck in the middle and white is absolutely winning. Here there is no move queen f6, which would normally be a response guarding the rook, because the knight is pinned, and so here they would just be dropping the queen. So in our game, black played rook to f8, and after bishop d6, it's inevitable that black is gonna drop material and maybe even get checkmated, and black resigned. So a very miniature game where two bad things happened for black. So first of all, they allowed white's queen to be activated into very center of the board, where she is also safe at the same time. The second mistake that happened was actually the decision to delay castling for 1 or 2 more moves. Here white found a very beautiful way to open up the position so that we could start attacking the king. And so from here on, black never actually had the chance to castle, and that cost them the game. I hope you enjoyed this video and a very beautiful game in my opinion. If you did, please subscribe to my chess channel for more such videos. You can also consider hiring me as your personal online chess coach. My contacts are on the right. I will see you in the next video. Stay safe, my friends, and goodbye.